On January 7, 2009, a 91-year-old woman, Selma Sally Hill, was brutally murdered by her estranged daughter-in-law and her mother. Driven by a twisted custody battle, Rosa Hill and Mei Li's shocking crime revealed a dark and calculating plan. If you're intrigued by this case and want to hear more gripping true crime stories, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more in-depth content. Your support helps us bring you the latest and most compelling stories every week. Rosa Hill, aged 49, and her mother Mei Li, aged 71, are both serving life sentences at the Central California Women's Facility, a high-security prison located in Chowchilla. Their lives took a dark turn that led to a heinous crime and their current incarceration. Rosa Hill, born in 1975, had a troubled and turbulent life marked by escalating conflicts. She was married to Eric Hill, a relationship that began through Mei Li, who was a colleague of Eric's. Rosa and Eric's marriage, which started with promise, quickly deteriorated. Their tumultuous relationship included a bitter custody battle over their daughter, which was a major catalyst for the crime. Mei Li, Rosa's mother, is 71 years old and was a key accomplice in the crime. Born in 1953, Mei was closely involved in Rosa's life and, as the case reveals, played a significant role in orchestrating the murder. Their relationship was marked by a close, albeit troubling, bond that contributed to their joint criminal actions. Both women are now serving their sentences at the Central California Women's Facility. This prison, known for housing female offenders with serious convictions, became their new home following their convictions for the brutal murder of Selma Sally Hill and the attempted murder of Eric Hill. Their time at the facility marks a stark contrast to the freedom they once had, highlighting the severe consequences of their actions. Rosa Hill's custody battle with her ex-husband Eric Hill was a central element in the tragic events that followed. Their relationship began in the early 2000s when Eric met Rosa through her mother Mei Li, a colleague at his workplace. Initially, their connection seemed promising. They married in April 2005, and shortly after, their first daughter was born. However, the relationship quickly soured. Despite Eric's efforts to make the marriage work, the couple began to experience significant problems. Rosa exhibited controlling behavior, leading to frequent arguments and mounting tension. By 2007, the couple had separated and Rosa gained control over their shared assets. The custody battle that ensued was bitter and fraught with conflict. Rosa's grievances grew as Eric sought to secure custody of their daughter. In a series of increasingly hostile actions, Rosa made several false accusations against Eric. She first accused him of planning a shooting, which led to a temporary suspension from his job during the investigation. The claims were ultimately proven false. Rosa's attempts to undermine Eric's credibility continued. She alleged that Eric had been abusing their child, a claim that was also investigated and found to be unsubstantiated. Despite these attempts, the court ruled in favor of a 50-50 custody arrangement between the two. Frustrated and desperate, Rosa's actions escalated when Eric was awarded full custody. The custody dispute reached its peak with Rosa and Mei Li devising a plan to eliminate Eric's support network, targeting his 91-year-old grandmother, Selma Sally Hill, in a twisted scheme they called Operation Custody. This dramatic shift from legal battles to violent crime underscores the extent of Rosa's desperation and the lengths she was willing to go to reclaim control over her life and her daughter. Operation Custody was the sinister plan devised by Rosa Hill and her mother Mei Li to regain control over Rosa's custody battle. Their goal was to remove Eric Hill's support system and frame him for a crime that would lead to his downfall, and ultimately secure custody of Rosa's daughter. The plan was meticulously crafted. Rosa and Mei identified Selma Sally Hill, Eric's 91-year-old grandmother, as their target. They intended to murder Sally and manipulate the situation to blame Eric for the crime. The ultimate aim was to destroy Eric's reputation and mental state, setting up a scenario where he would be forced to confess to the murder and potentially take his own life, thus removing any chance of competing for custody. On January 7, 2009, Rosa and Mei executed their chilling plan. They broke into Sally's home in the late morning. The entry was violent and premeditated. They initially subdued Sally using a taser, which rendered her incapacitated. Following this, they strangled Sally to death, ensuring that their brutal act was both effective and irreversible. After committing the murder, they wrapped Sally's body in a tarp. The body was then discarded in a trash can located in the backyard shed, an attempt to hide the evidence and delay the discovery of the crime. As part of their plan, they also targeted Eric. When Eric arrived at Sally's house with his daughter, he began searching for his grandmother. Rosa and Mei attacked him, using a gun to threaten and subdue him. The violence was intended to create chaos and ensure that Eric would be blamed for the murder. The crime scene was chaotic. When police arrived, they were confronted with a bloody and disordered scene. The initial confusion led to difficulty in identifying both the victims and perpetrators. However, the police investigation would eventually uncover the full extent of Rosa and Mei's premeditated crime, revealing the brutal and calculated nature of Operation Custody. As the situation unfolded on January 7, 2009, Eric Hill arrived at his grandmother Sally's house, unaware of the horrific events that had already transpired. Upon entering the home, Eric began searching for Sally, who had not answered his phone calls earlier that day. It was then that Rosa Hill and Mei Li launched their attack. Rosa and Mei confronted Eric as he moved through the house. Rosa initially attempted to overpower Eric with physical force. The confrontation quickly escalated when Rosa pulled out a gun and aimed it at Eric. This was a critical moment as Eric, already grappling with the shock of discovering Sally's murder, faced a life-threatening situation. Despite his attempts to fight back, the threat of the gun rendered him helpless. Meanwhile, Lester Rowe, Sally's 91-year-old boyfriend, became alarmed when Sally did not answer their usual 4 p.m. phone call. Lester and Sally had shared a close bond, and they maintained a daily routine of calling each other for what they called cocktail hour. Growing increasingly concerned, Lester left several messages and eventually reached out to his son and daughter-in-law, Jeff and Yuta Rowe, to check on Sally. Jeff and Yuta arrived at Sally's home and began searching for her. As they conducted their search, they heard what they believed to be a gunshot, which was actually the sound of Rosa using a taser on Eric. Fearing the worst, Jeff and Yuta rushed to a neighbor's house to call 911. The response from Lester and his family highlighted the deep concern and love they had for Sally. Lester, devastated by the news of her murder, was deeply affected by the tragedy. The profound grief of losing Sally was compounded by the chaos and violence that had unfolded. Lester's own health deteriorated following the incident, and he passed away less than a year later, marking the end of a significant chapter in his life. When police arrived at the scene on January 7, 2009, they were met with considerable confusion. The chaotic and bloody environment made it difficult to immediately discern the nature of the crime and identify both the victims and perpetrators. Blood spatter and disarray in the home complicated the initial investigation. As officers conducted their search, they discovered the body of Selma Sally Hill. Wrapped in a tarp and discarded in a trash can in the backyard shed, Sally's remains were a stark indicator of the brutal violence that had occurred. The presence of a taser and signs of a violent struggle further detailed the severity of the attack. In addition to Sally's body, investigators found several key pieces of evidence. Rosa Hill's car, located about half a block from the crime scene, contained a range of incriminating items. Among them were a samurai sword, leg irons, and other weapons, all of which pointed to premeditated violence. The assortment of items suggested a carefully planned and executed crime. Further investigation led detectives to a Brentwood location linked to Rosa and Mei Li. There, authorities uncovered a significant cache of evidence connecting the two women to the crime. This included multiple weapons such as crossbows and a hunting knife, along with a backpack containing a rope, throwing star, and crowbar. The presence of these items, alongside suspicious notes, provided crucial evidence of their involvement. One of the notes found detailed a plan for revenge for Rosa, including names such as Eric, Sally, and Gregory Hill. The notes, written in two different handwritings, revealed that both Rosa and Mei were deeply involved in the conspiracy. This evidence, combined with the items found in their possession, helped solidify the link between Rosa, Mei, and the murder of Sally Hill. Following their arrest, Rosa Hill and Mei Li faced significant legal proceedings for their involvement in the murder of Selma Sally Hill and the attempted murder of Eric Hill. The trials were a crucial phase in delivering justice for the heinous crimes they committed. Rosa Hill was convicted in June 2011 of first-degree murder for Sally's death and attempted murder for the attack on Eric. Her conviction led to a sentence of 25 years to life in prison. The court's decision reflected the gravity of her actions and the premeditated nature of the crime. Rosa's sentence ensures that she will spend a substantial portion of her life behind bars, unable to rejoin society. Mei Li, Rosa's mother and co-conspirator, was also convicted in June 2011. She was found guilty of premeditated attempted murder and sentenced to life in prison. Mei's life sentence was a direct consequence of her active role in the planning and execution of the crime, underscoring the court's recognition of her significant involvement and culpability. Casey Bates, the lead prosecutor on the case, provided a detailed account of the motives and planning behind the crime. Bates described Operation Custody as a desperate and ruthless scheme driven by Rosa's desire to regain custody of her daughter. He emphasized that the plan involved not just the murder of Sally, but a broader intention to destroy Eric Hill's life and career, ultimately forcing him into a position where he would either confess to the crime or be driven to despair. Bates highlighted the calculated nature of the crime, noting that both Rosa and Mei had meticulously planned the murder to achieve their goals. The prosecution's presentation of evidence, including the incriminating items and detailed notes, was instrumental in securing the convictions. Bates's statements underscored the tragic outcome of a case driven by personal vendetta and a disregard for human life. The impact of the crime extended deeply into the lives of those connected to Selma Sally Hill. Lester Rowe, Sally's 91-year-old boyfriend, was profoundly affected by her murder. Lester and Sally had shared a significant and loving relationship, often maintaining a routine of daily phone calls for cocktail hour. When Sally did not answer her phone on January 7th, Lester became worried and eventually asked his family to check on her. The grief and trauma of losing Sally took a heavy toll on Lester. He was visibly devastated by her death and struggled with the loss in the months that followed. Less than a year after Sally's murder, Lester passed away, a loss attributed to the immense emotional strain he endured. For Eric Hill and his daughter, the aftermath of the crime was equally harrowing, but marked by a journey of recovery and resilience. Despite the intense trauma caused by the murder of Sally and the attack on Eric himself, both have managed to find a path forward. Eric Hill faced significant emotional and psychological challenges, grappling with the impact of the violent attack and the loss of his grandmother. However, he has since worked to rebuild his life and provide a stable environment for his daughter. Eric has spoken about his experiences and his ongoing role as a father. He acknowledges the difficulty of his situation, but also highlights the strength and progress of his daughter. She has grown into a capable and talented young woman, and Eric takes pride in her achievements and character. Their lives have been marked by the trauma of the past, but they have managed to move forward, finding solace and strength in their family bond. The case, with its deep and tragic consequences, remains a stark reminder of the far-reaching impact of violent crime on individuals and families, illustrating both the depth of loss and the resilience of those who endure it. If you found this case as compelling as we did, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more in-depth true crime stories. Your support helps us bring you the most intriguing and detailed content. Stay tuned for more stories that dive deep into the complexities of the human experience.